Okay, welcome to episode 16 of the Total Hockey Training Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Scahan. And before I introduce my next guest, I just want to remind everybody my Train Heroic program is in the in-season phase. You can get that at trainheroic.com. Search Total Hockey Training. And also just a reminder that Total Hockey Training 2 is my second book, which is a collaboration of articles and previous blog posts that I've written. That's available on, I guess that's available on my Linktree site, which is on my Instagram. But anyways, my next guest is Ben Prentiss. Ben has been a strength and conditioning coach for over 2 decades. He is the owner of Prentiss Hockey Performance in Stamford, Connecticut. He's also a level 5 certified coach with Charles Poliquin. I definitely want to get into that. He has trained several, there's too many to list here, several NHL players, including Stanley Cup winners, Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers, and several individual award winners. Ben, welcome to the show. I just want to, before you get started, I just want to say, I've known of Ben for a long time, and I picked up the phone and gave him a ring, and I should have done that a long time ago. And Ben, welcome to the show, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an honor. So what do you got going on right now?
So now we're currently have the PWHL, the New York women's team. So this is the inaugural season. Pretty exciting to be on the ground floor of what they're trying to accomplish. So we're currently on All-Star break. So have some girls in today, and that's an everyday thing. And we have the Mid-Fairfield AAA teams, and then I have a couple of the pros that I keep in touch with and do their stuff and help them out and running the business.
Good. Good for you. Now, where does the team play? Where does the
They
women's
play, so they play out of the Islanders at UBS Arena in Long Island, and then they
Okay.
play out of the Sound Tigers, which is their AHL for the Islanders in Bridgeport. So completely the opposite areas, and they practice here at what's called Chelsea Piers, which is it's like a mall of just sports. Like they have 2 full-size rinks, Olympic swimming pools, soccer fields, basketball courts, that kind of thing. So they practice over there, work out here, and play at those 2 Islander places.
Now, where is Chelsea Piers? Because I believe
So
I've been there. It's in the city, correct?
yeah, so it's literally a mile from me where I am.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're in like the suburb of Stamford. They're in downtown Stamford, which is, for people who listen, is a small city, 45 minutes outside of New York City.
Okay, because I thought there was another place called Chelsea Piers.
In New York City, there's another one.
Yeah, I've been to that one. I think I
Yeah,
took the wrong turn one time,
yeah,
and I was on the set of Law and Order,
yeah.
right?
Shoot everything down there. It's on the West Side Highway. So yeah, it's
Yeah, that I remember
anybody
that
that plays hockey in Manhattan, that's basically the place to like play pickup or anything like that.
because a long time ago working with the Ducks, we had a practice, and like you said, pickup hockey was going on, and our guys were showering with pickup hockey guys. So these guys were in there getting signed sticks, and they were showering next to the players.
That's
I'll
pretty
never forget
exciting for
that.
the other people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's cool. So that's great, man. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
I of course I know you worked under Charles, as my friends Nelson and Preston have,
Yeah.
and I've always found myself, I been to several of his seminars and communicated with him, but you guys actually work for him. And what could you take away from that, and what'd you learn from that? And I know he was your mentor, and yeah, talk about that.
Yeah.
Talk about your
Well,
learning and program
yeah, I
design.
use the term for me, I would use the term mentor loosely in that he was a big influence on me, and just that, I mean, you and I are the same ancient age here where we've been around. And at the time when I was in college, your choices of mentors or people to learn from was really Mike Boyle, Paul Check,
Yeah.
Vern Gambetta, Donald Chu,
Yeah.
Louis Simmons, and who am I
Al
missing?
Vermeil.
Yeah. And that was pretty much, I'm thinking, that's pretty much who you chose from. I forgot somebody, but so, as a young, and again, exercise science when I was in college and it was drastically different than it is now. We were certainly more aerobic based, and all of my information and learning came from being self-taught besides the anatomy and general classes that I took in college. So everything I learned was I looked for mentors, and Charles was one that I found and just resonated with me, as I'm sure most people that first met him, and his knowledge and
Hmm.
his passion. So that was in 1990. I first started with him in 1990, like 1994, 95. And what I did was I went to, at the time, he was in the basement of Testosterone T Nation, which is still out, but at the time
Yeah.
had a magazine called Testosterone. And
Hmm.
Charles rented space in the basement of that place. And what he did was he had all these old Med-X, Arthur Jones Med-X machines that he would test people on. And he would have guys just come in for 2 days, get their programs. And we're talking, this is Chris Pronger, Norris Trophy time, Al
Hmm.
McGinnis, Jeremy Roenick, Dougie Waite came in after. Those guys really was the start of it for Charles in hockey. So that was my first exposure to professional athletes and or NHL training at that time. So as my knowledge and thirst for getting better, I followed him and I mentored under him, and then he offered me a job 2 years later, and he moved to Arizona, so I started working for him. So and it goes on, and that was my influence. But if you were to come to my facility today, this is now 27 years later.
Hmm.
I've certainly, you probably wouldn't see anything that would remind you of a Poliquin-esque type training. And, for people that are listening, maybe they don't even know who he is at this time, but, I certainly am grateful for all the knowledge he gave me, but kind of like Bruce Lee always says, absorb what is useful, discard what is not. And
Hmm.
I became my own man and believed in what was right for training athletes and used what he gave me, and then became my own.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think that's important too. Like you said, the Bruce Lee quote nails it, right? And take what you can and what you can learn from him and apply it to your own methodology and philosophy. And I think that's awesome. Um, so one question I have for you is when your guys come back from their teams, as you know, they're all beat up. Some might not be as beat up as others. Obviously, that depends on how far they go into the playoffs. So what is like your first day like? Is it an evaluation process? Obviously, the guy from previous off seasons. Like, where do you go from there?
Yeah, well, it's different now than it was 15 years ago, because
Hmm.
without sounding like uh, I don't know if this podcast is, without sounding like a jerk, um, I don't just take guys now, where,
Hmm.
because obviously when we're all younger, you're dying to get that NHL person and you're dying to get that jersey on the wall. But frankly, times have changed, and, I've, been doing this for a long, long time, and am in a fortunate position where, now I'm going to take people that I want to take that are going to represent me and are going to get the results that I'm going to want to give them, as opposed to, hey, I'm just walking in this gym with 170 NHL jerseys, magic's going to happen.
Hmm.
So first thing I do now is we have a conversation. And the conversation is to whether or not talk about expectations. And I basically talk to them about, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I expect of you. This is not just, a 50% thing. This is all engaged. Here's what I'm going to want. This is the time commitment I'm going to want. Are you willing to do all this? And then here's what it's going to cost. And if they're, okay with all those things, then we agree. And then it becomes the first time is a full head to toe evaluation, which again is drastically different now than it was 15 years ago, as I realize what I need for test, as opposed to when you're younger, you're like, oh, hey, Sean Skahan said this is a great test, so I'm doing this because he has experience in hockey. And that's what all young people do, right? So, but now I know now through, all of the metrics that we've been using with technology, what really transfers for the ice. And I've, over the years, really, 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 I mean, we all do, but I've really tried to only do exercises and workouts that truly help them get better at hockey and the skills of hockey and the performance of hockey, as opposed to meeting metrics that don't really mean anything, weight numbers that don't transfer.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
yeah, so that's the first day. Then we start them. So if what does that first day look like? It's we do a full shoulder hip. We use valved and output. They're two goinometers, so we can actually see degrees of motion, and as opposed to just kind of guessing. So now we go internal and external range. We have norms for that. We go flexion, extension. We look at obviously the ankle, which is so important now. We're looking at ankle mobility in all of them, all degrees, eversion, inversion, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. We do a plantar flexion endurance test. Then we do neck, cervical flex, side flexion, extension, rotation. So we have all of those numbers. Then we do strength tests of, we do a counter movement jump. We do a vertical jump. We do a 3 jump. We do an isometric mid-thigh belt squat. We do a 1080 isokinetic lateral push-off. We do off the top of my head, we do a 10-yard sprint. We do a loaded 1080 sprint to see the differences of starting. And then we do currently our upper body test is a ring chins for strength. And we look at rotator cuff movement now, as opposed to the old Poliquin kind of, I'm sure you remember those, just because those norms in my eyes didn't really match reality. So we changed that one as well. So we have and then we do on ice testing too, which sounds crazy, but if you probably polled, all NHL strength coaches, the majority of them don't do on ice testing, which is a little odd to me. So, we do a goal line to close blue, we do a goal line to far blue, and then we do a change of direction as well on the ice. And then we retest everything once a month.
You retest. So you do an on ice test when the guys get back from their season.
Yeah, which is a little awkward, right? But they don't want to do it. But we try to explain to them it's invaluable to have these numbers and to have an idea. So whether or not it's a reflection of their state, it's a good starting point to take, because it's right when they're done playing. So
absolutely.
So in my eyes, people, well, what's the difference of doing a 10-yard sprint or a 20-yard sprint off ice, asking them to do that? Well, they skate. So let's get a metric of how they skate.
Yeah. And of course, too, they probably haven't ran a 10-yard.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation that we can get into. I don't know if you've seen. So, obviously all of the Achilles off ice injuries in hockey is, in my eyes, pretty, you're looking at one guy a year in the offseason tearing his Achilles. And, obviously there's a lot to do, but, I try to hem my bets as much as I can. With now we have a trampoline that we have a trampoline track that we use, and again, the reality of it is these guys don't run or jump for 9 months, 10
Mm-hmm.
months.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of a sudden you want them to train like a football player or a soccer player or a track athlete in 3 months. It's
Right.
crazy. That's what happens, right? Like we want to do
Mm-hmm.
these cool plyos, but yet these guys can't do a simple Achilles jump. So
Mm-hmm.
to build Achilles resilience and to work on that stretch reflex on low amplitude, extensive jumps instead of going full into deep tier stuff. We start with trampoline, we start with jump rope, we using barefoot walking, backwards walking, all of these things for typically the first 4 or 5 weeks before they start doing any of your classic sprinting, jumping, of those things. So we gradually put them into that position.
I love that. I always thought that when teams would have a running conditioning test, you would have situations where guys want to get ready for that test,
Right.
and usually that's when they might blow out an Achilles.
Well, it's the 300, right? The
Yeah,
classic
the
300 under a minute. That's an NHL thing. Not too
correct.
many teams do it anymore, but they do. Frankly, depending on so
Mm-hmm.
what happens is the guys that are, on that entry level deal or they're on a two-way, these are the guys that are going to do everything possible for these tests, where
Mm-hmm.
the reality of the situation is, I don't need to name names, but guys that are elite players in the league could show up and fail every single test. And the worst thing that's going to happen to them is they're going to get put into fat camp for a week on the bike
Yep.
or it
Yeah.
where a kid who's busted his ass all summer long to prepare for a test. So when I'm going on 9 years as a consultant with the Rangers, and we in the past I've worked with I did their testing, and
Mm-hmm.
my goal is always to create tests that the actual good hockey players, the ones that are fast on the ice, the ones that can change direction on the ice, do well on the tests that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all know now that the strongest guy in the weight room is not necessarily the fastest guy on the ice, and he's not necessarily the best player by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I like to say strong is fast, but strongest isn't fastest. So everyone needs to get stronger to be able to apply that ability to get faster. But there's plenty of skaters that are efficient enough on the ice because the way they skate. But if you saw them in the weight room, you'd think they were like accountants. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, they're the farthest thing from looking like an athlete,
Mm-hmm.
but they know how to skate because that is a skill unto its own. So they can get by with not being able to do, for lack of a better, squat their body weight, even come close, but yet they're an elite skater in the NHL.
Yep.
So that's when you have to understand and create metrics to testing that actually matters. And to me, that's been the skill and the challenge over the years, is to fine tune that, to not just say, like, if you talk to me 15 years ago, I thought I was the shit like everybody else. And I had all these NHL guys, and I had this unwarranted arrogance about myself, because at the end of the day, it's a team sport, and a strength coach is a small part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and I get carried away as in my youthful times, and a GM or an agent would say to me at that time, "Hey, how's so and so?" "Oh, they're great. I'm great." Well, why are they great? Well, they squat this much, and when the beginning of the summer they only squatted this much, and they power cleaned this, and now they power clean that. So I'm great, and they're great. When the reality of it is, when I look at it now in the past 6, 7 years, where we've looked at metrics, you actually, it's almost malpractice to some athletes, because you take a guy. So I was looking, and I take a guy who's super, super strong, and us as strength coaches, we want to feel relevant, right? So what do?
Mm-hmm.
We keep making them stronger, but then as I'm looking at their jump, they're not jumping any higher at all, and they're not
Right.
running any faster, so they're not getting any faster. So I'm actually doing them a disservice. So now why we test so often. We test, we train, we test, we train. So I know, hey, this guy is quote unquote strong enough. Not the Doc Stone waiting for 2 times your body weight strong. We'll be waiting around forever for that.
Yeah.
Nor is that needed, in my opinion, but more like strong enough in the metrics that we see with isometric, where we can produce a lot of force overcoming isometric, as opposed to loading you axle, this and that. And this way, I know, okay, now he's attained enough strength. So now let's start working on velocity and his ability to create velocity. And so, sure enough, this athlete that I take off of these, real quick, I remember a guy, I had a young kid. He's trap bar. He comes to me middle of the summer. This was like 4 years ago. He's trap bar deadlifting over 500 pounds. So obviously this is important to him because he's good at it. Whereas take most of the skilled guys in the NHL, they're not good at working out, so they don't like it. They they don't move weight, they don't like it. So us as a strength coach, that doesn't mean let's just make up bullshit exercises to keep them happy. No, that's also a disservice. Let's move the needle the right way and give them things that may resonate with them better, meaning an overcoming isometric where they actually have real-time data feedback to see how hard they're pushing and how much force they're creating, as opposed to putting, 275 pounds on a safety bar split squat, where I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying in this case, this athlete is he's going to be checked out. And he's checked out, he's not going to do the workout to its fullest point. So let's create stuff where he can have the maximal intent so he's able to produce the most force possible. So that's not making up some stupid exercise to keep him. It's creating the appropriate exercise. So going back to this guy, all of a sudden I give him concentric speed work, concentric Kaiser squats, compensatory squats, more jumps, more overcoming ISO, things to create rate of force. And his vertical jump went from, again, for those I don't use inches, he went from like a 0.32, which is below average in our gym, to a like 0.4, low 0.4 something in a month. So it's because we took off that slow lifting and moved into a higher velocity of intent. And if you look and you do any dynamic corresponding tests or this, 90% of the time a hockey player is going to be mixed, meaning it's not going to be that cut and dry. It's not that cut and dry to just go, this guy needs velocity, this guy needs force. That's another thing that, as a young trainee strength coach, you want everything simple. You want it black and white. Oh, I'm going to have this guy do velocity. I'm going to have this guy do force, but it doesn't work that way. For the most part, they are a mixed and they need all of it. But when the skill of a strength coach is to find that 2% to be able to help them instead of just using them to get stronger or something like that.
I love that. That's a great point. And you made a point, strong enough. I think that's something that's key here. Like being strong enough. You don't have to increase strength all the time. So a lot of these guys are already strong enough.
Yeah, but there's two parts to that. Like, again, you can be strong in different ways, right?
Sure.
So if you do the translation of a force plate from metrics, take 400 newtons of force and translate to pounds, I understand it's not an exact correlation, but my point is these are guys that would never use that load with a barbell or dumbbells.
Right.
Now you can create the intent, you can create competition, you can create all this force. So that's why I've been a big proponent of flywheel. So, I've been using flywheels for over 15 years, but I now, over the past 5 years, literally in a certain phase, have a whole flywheel day where I will use full body flywheel. I also use flywheel in season. I use flywheel in between periods. I use flywheel before games. But again, it's the context. It's not, oh, Ben, no, I use it all. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be one or the other. You know, we as strength coaches should not say, I'm a this guy, I'm a that guy. You should be a toolbox results person, and you should be doing whatever's good for the athlete. And I think that's where, you know, why it takes me so long to write programs, because I don't have one program that I write for 4 months of the off season and that's it. You know, I'm doing, you know, 35 workouts a night because we have hundreds of people that require more specificity than generalization. Now, sure, a young kid who's going to have quick adaptation can use a very basic quote unquote cookie cutter workout.
Mm-hmm.
When they start getting to the point of juniors, college, these kids are not the same as they were when you and I. These
Mm-hmm.
kids are kids that are playing 75 games a year, 9 months out of the year, since they were 9 years old or younger. So
Yeah.
you talk about FAI and labrum and no mobility. And then that's the obvious, but let's talk about the fact that none of these kids are athletes. They
Right.
don't know how to move. I mean, try to get a kid to do an A skip, a B
Oh,
skip. It's
skips. Oh,
no.
brutal.
So it's brutal. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
these kids. So doing things that initially people laugh at me, trampoline, hula hoop, they all laugh. Hula hoop is unbelievable for pelvic control, balance beam, all of these, you know, things that people laugh and think are stupid. The minute we give them to them and they can attain a certain proprioception. Now, again, I'm not saying do that for your whole workout. My
Right.
point is, I'm using these as proprioception warm up to get them neurologically efficient, vestibular system, their feet. And then that allows me to then get them a little taste of athleticism. Because again, if people don't train hockey players, they are wildly have a misconception of what you're dealing with. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, for somebody that has been training hockey players at all ages for the past 30 years, they are a minority in athleticism. And why I like that is that I joke around that I can get a hockey player to jump like a football player. And if I can do that, I'm taking a non-athlete and getting him to move like an athlete. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a win. So it certainly has changed, and it's kind of filtering out a lot of misinformation out there now. And that's the problem, and that there's so much information. You know, when you and I were coming up, I mentioned those people
Mm-hmm.
earlier. Those were pretty much the only voices then. And you had to go and hear from them in seminars and write things down on this crazy old thing called paper and use a pencil or pen.
Yeah.
And you refer back to that information, as opposed to now, everything is just quick hitting and people don't want to sit for a seminar, and it's a different thing. And
Yeah.
instead of me sounding like an old jaded codger, it's more like, how can I adapt, and how can I do things still in that I believe in and still move the needle?
Right. Oh, that makes so much sense. And I totally agree with you. I think that, and we can go on and on about that. I think that is the change from the multi-sport athlete to the singular athlete. And I tell people that I look at strength and conditioning, or what I do, as another sport. If they're just going to play hockey, because you are going to come in, you are going to learn how to move and do things that, you know, you probably should have learned in PE when you're in first grade that you can't do. It reminds me of a friend of mine told me his cousin is dating a really good prospect, and they met each other and they were throwing a wiffle ball around, and the kid couldn't catch a wiffle ball or throw a wiffle ball, but he is a stud playing at a Division I school right now, already drafted. And that's what reality is right now. And just alluding to the fact that, yeah, like we're gonna do different things. We're gonna do our dynamic warm-ups and movement prep stuff to get moving and to try to learn some movement skills.
Yeah,
And
and the hard part is 100% right. I mean, I don't want to forget all of that's so true. And but the one thing that's equally important, what you just said, is people don't have the patience to wait for that, right? Like
right.
they want,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, no, 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 I don't want to do this shit. I want to just be fast and I want to be able to, skate 20 miles an hour and I want all this now. I don't want to wait. Why am I doing this stupid shit? This is gym class. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
do this. Well, the point, and we don't know the exact time. We know that, we know about long-term athletic development. We understand about growth plates of girls are different than boys, and the hormonal change is different age. We understand all that. But what we don't understand is when is the sweet spot to stop playing multi-sports and go to the one sport.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I mean to tell you, a parent will walk in. So I train Marty St. Louis kids, Chris Drury's kid, Mark Messier's kid, all of these legends. I never see them. They drop the kid off. They go Jeff Gordon, GM of the president of the Habs, his kid. That I don't ever talk to them. You know who I talk to all the time? The mom and dad who never played a sport in their life
Right.
coming in day one. I'm standing in front of 150 jerseys and they say, can you get hockey players fast? I want my kid to. So I'm looking at the kid. The kid, can't do 10 push-ups and do an A skip. But the first thing they say to me is, I want them faster and I want them more explosive. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, those two words aren't even in our, that's on the back page of this Moby Dick knowledge right
Yeah.
novel right now. Like,
Yeah.
let's not even worry about that right now. Like right now, this kid can't move, but they don't have the patience. They want this kid, Marty St. Louis legs in 12 weeks.
Right.
And it doesn't work like that.
No. Mm-mm.
And so that's the challenge, is that we have this unreal expectation put upon us to turn these kids out, where the difference is in the offseason in NHL, this is the only thing they do, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
here, they can work out 2 times a day, they can come in for mobility, I can do extra pool work with them, I can do their have soft tissue, I get their meal service, everything is taken care of. Where a kid, you have to look at all the cumulative load of studying, lack of sleep, blue light exposure, stress of school, stress of their peers. And I'm telling you right now, 99% of our athletes are malnourished. They
Mm-hmm.
don't eat enough. They're not eating enough calories. They're not hydrated. So, a kid wants to talk to me about NO2 and creatine. And I'm like, what'd you eat today?
Mm-hmm.
And how many hours did you sleep? But they don't
Sleep.
want to hear that, right? They
Nope.
want they want creatine. I'm like, well, taking creatine and NO2 is going to do absolutely nothing for you when your neck is 5 feet ahead of you because you've been staring at your phone and your iPad for 8 hours a day and you're getting 4 hours of sleep. So let's worry about those things and let's change the way you eat. And then we can talk about creatine in 3 months,
Yeah.
because they all tell me they can't gain weight. But then the minute that they eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, they like, it's unbelievable how they gain weight quick when
Mm-hmm.
they start doing that. But it's something so it's a challenge, that are different things as opposed to the pros, as opposed to, and the juniors in college who want to live their life like pros. A BCHL kid, a USHL kid is essentially living the life of a pro hockey player minus the money. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're at home all day long. They go to practice. They hang out at the rink. They have the same kind of swagger, minus the experience and the cachet yet. So it's a challenge to try to stay true to yourself, and make a difference.
I agree. And I think what's important is these guys in the NHL, I mean, when I first started years ago, no, but nowadays these guys have it dialed in, like what you just talked about, nutrition, sleep, hydration, because they don't want to lose their spots. And
Well,
they're most of
yeah,
them,
I
I mean,
mean, yeah,
except
I
for your
think
kind
most of
of,
them. I think you would be surprised at how many guys are not dialed in. They all want to skate and they all want to play hockey, but they don't want to do the other stuff. And
yeah,
they don't want to do what's hard. They want to continue to do what they're already good at. Like
yeah,
a guy who scores tons of goals and's got great. And by the way, here's the problem in hockey. He doesn't have to do anything and he's still going to score a lot of goals and still be
right.
good because but and then other people see that and assume that that's what's going to happen, where that's the 2%. But
That's a good
the
point.
fact of the matter is, everybody wants to, I can say his name because obviously everybody jokes about him, is what's his name? The Iron Man that's never missed a game.
Kessel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I trained a guy that roomed with Kessel in the Olympics.
Hmm.
And he said that Kessel literally at Sochi, and he's like, this guy had nothing but candy and soda in his during the Olympics and ate McDonald's the entire Olympics. And the guy never missed a game and he played, I
Yeah.
don't know, I mean, it's unbelievable. And he was for the time an elite fast skater, right?
Yeah.
For a guy who admittedly himself, I mean, I don't know him personally. I'm just saying from what I've heard and obviously what I see. And what are you going to argue? That if he worked out and ate gluten free and dairy free and was 6% body fat, he'd still be playing? Well, maybe, but I mean, the guy played how many years and how many games, and
Right.
he's a pretty darn good player. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying again that that's good. I'm just saying that good hockey skills trumps everything. Now, that
Oh,
doesn't mean you
100%.
shouldn't work hard, but you can get a strength coach that's giving you fluffy hockey drills off ice to keep you happy. And you're going to probably now is he more prone to injury? For sure.
Hmm.
But, is he going to want to grind on the pavement, pushing 25 plates on a prowler? Probably not.
Right.
Uh, and the ones that do are the ones that are going to have transcendent time, as like guys that are gonna, like Sidney Crosby. I don't know what he does. I know Andy, his trainer, but the point is that guy is still elite, and the work ethic that he has sets an example in my eyes of the way to be a pro for, I don't know, what is he on, 17 years, something crazy.
Yeah.
So now there might be guys that, because I've seen him my whole career, a guy who has 30 goals for 2 or 3 years, and then you don't ever hear from him ever
Yeah.
again.
100%.
And those are the guys that I can guarantee you didn't have a good work ethic, because if they did, they would maybe not keep scoring 30 goals, but they wouldn't be out of the league because they obviously can play the game. And if you can play
Hmm.
the game, the easy part is adding the conditioning, the strength, the mobility, the off ice. The hard part is you and I can be the best, whatever you want to call it, strength coach, performance coach on the planet, and we can do we can make them jump higher, we can have better mobility in their hips, we can lower their body fat, we can get them to skate faster, but if they suck at hockey, then we're not going to look good.
Right. I think that's that. I think, and there's more guys who aren't as good as those elite players. I guess for me, those are the guys who have it dialed in, that they know they're not as talented as some of these guys who can get away, like a Phil Kessel, for example. But there are a lot of more guys who don't have those skills, that's how they're going to stay in the league, is by being disciplined, being organized. But you do have those guys that are outliers, I guess,
Well, yeah, and
so
it's the wrong sentiment going in the locker room. It's like the guys that are good, that don't do shit, are cool, and the guys that work their ass off are like made fun of, and they're like,
yeah,
look at this guy,
yeah,
look at this guy eating clean right now. We just played a game. That kind of, it's
yeah,
literally like that, where if you're just trying to do so, like the guys that I've had that are young, I literally tell them just try to like don't make any just don't have anybody notice you. Like you know, try to do this without anybody noticing you, because until you're can able to tell them to kick rocks when you're a player, it's like there's peer pressure to not do good things.
100%.
I mean, as
Yeah,
crazy as
big
it
time.
sounds, it's like that.
100%.
So,
Yeah.
and let's also analyze the game. Hockey's wild. Like people don't get it. Like, of course, everybody knows about the 40 seconds on the anaerobic aspect, that we all get that, but that's not really the reality. If you break it down more, you have like 8 hard strides, then you're shifting on both legs most of the time. And really, unless you're a first line guy, your shifts aren't even 40 seconds. Like if you're a call up, if you're a fourth line guy, you're like 20 seconds, get off the ice, and I hope I didn't do anything wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Now let's break it down even more. Within that, if you're the greatest player in the world, the puck is on your stick 7% of the time, maybe 10% at the most of a game. So that means what all of the time, what are you doing the other 93% of the time as a hockey player? You don't have the puck on your stick. So I think that gets lost in how you should train and the amount that you should train and what you're training for. Because it's not just minutes based, it's what you're doing in those minutes and how should you treat your off season. Like, should a guy that's a fourth line guy worry about a skills coach, or should he worry about being the most athletic MFer you've ever seen in your life and being able to go out there like his hair's on fire? So I don't know. I'm just putting that out there because, what you want, you have 3 months, right? 4 if you're lucky, most of the time 3 months. In that 3 months, that's not a lot of time to be a game changer. And yes, 100% you need to be ready at that point when the puck's on your stick, but it's 7% of the time. So think about that, where basketball, these are all basketball, the ball's in your hand. One guy can change the course of a game. Hockey, a goalie, of course, is going to change the course of a game, but, it's drastically different. So I think the preparation of how you get ready, another misnomer in my eyes, or misconception, I should say, is if you poll most guys and go, what's tired? Your lung, at the end of a shift, is it your legs or your lungs? For the most part, depending on they're going to tell you it's their legs. And to me, that tells you something also about how you need to train. That doesn't mean, I'm not saying do more weights than bike. I'm saying do more anaerobic work for your legs in this capacity as opposed to aerobic work or something. And my point is, do your aerobic work in the right position in the summer to establish the rest of the summer. So again, it's not all or nothing. It's just really doing a hard need analysis, not the basic shit that everybody knows, like concentric abduction, hip we all know all that. We all know about the load of the hip on the ice, but let's really look at what I laugh with my guys because I've been doing shin, knee over toe, anterior. I have a hammer strength anterior tibialis machine that I bought when I was in college and I left in my grandmother's room that I kept in 1992 that I still have today. So I've been doing anterior tibialis since 1992. And now I joke because I say, if you go to every expensive skating coach in the world, the first thing they tell the guys now is, we got to get faster. You got to get your knee over your skate more to get lower. What is that? Isometric strength in the lower back, which nobody wants to train. Things that are going to help you get lower. So we've been doing that for a long, long time, and things that aren't the obvious. It's more like do a deeper dive in need analysis of what that person needs.
Love it. That's awesome. I want to talk about your quad current system. I just give me some brief overview on that. I think I have an idea.
Sure.
But tell me how you progress it during
Yeah.
the summer.
Well, I'll preface it with the quad current is the name that I named of my system. I did not invent omni contraction. That's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's just my take on an omni contraction system. So for anybody listening, what is an omni contraction? So you have Louis Simmons obviously brought forth a concurrent training system.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, our old guys, William Kramer was the first one that kind of came up with that high, medium, low in a week, which
Mm-hmm.
is the current system. Louis came from Verkhoshansky. He made his max effort, dynamic effort, and instead of repetition method, which Verkhoshansky has, Louis just did two dynamics, two max efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Charles was more of a linear periodization using accumulation and intensification. So long story short, over the years, I started like every young kid following Charles's system, which was essentially a bodybuilding split.
Yep.
And it didn't resonate with me in the way athletes train. So I switched to a Louis Simmons to upper, lower, which is very popular in the NFL now, that kind of two upper, two lower. Um, and then I started 4 years ago. This will be summer 5, maybe 6 of doing omni contraction. So doing full body workouts where each day, so it's a linear model in that we still use accumulation, intensification, and transfer, call it specific prep, whatever you want to call it, the last phase. But within each phase, it stays in that model of accumulation, intensification, but we use, or I use, an omni contraction system. So what does that mean? Accumulation, Monday, eccentric work, your slow eccentrics. Now, those exercises would essentially be the same thing as pretty much everybody does. Split squats, a variation, unilateral work, rotator cuff work, structural balance accumulation work with anywhere from 7 seconds to 4-second eccentric. The next day would be isometric, which would be long duration isometrics. So, the naysayers, and I don't care because it works and I've done it forever, but the naysayers are like, you can't train 2 days in a row, full body, they're going to be too sore. And my reply is exactly. That's why I do long duration isos. What does long duration iso do? Release collagen, tissue adaptation, allows for better ranges of motion in that position. Also, maybe some hypertrophy, maybe some blood flow. It is not a performance day. It is a recuperation day. It is a setup day for other days, for other phases. So we're using the same positions. So there's adaptation. So instead of hitting the athlete with a million different exercises, they're using the same exercises in different contractions and in also different ranges of motion.
Say the same exercises as on Monday.
Yes.
Okay.
So they would do a split squat on Monday, and then Tuesday they would do a holding split squat in a certain range of motion.
Got it.
And then, so that day is ISO. Wednesday is our mobility day where they come in and we do, I'm a big proponent of SOMA training, which is Eldoa, which is Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Guy. I've been doing that since like 95. So we do an hour of that. And then Thursday they come back and it's specific to that phase. So Thursday now becomes sled day, which is which is more like anaerobic lactic capacity day, where they pull sleds in all different variations with certain rest intervals to mimic that energy system. What that also does is now what's our hard lengthened day where it was Monday. So now Friday becomes a heavy day where we do stuff in shortened range of motion. So off the pins, split squat, off the pins, presses, and then maybe hypertrophy work if we need it in that day.
So
And then,
it's not necessarily concentric day then.
well, yeah, it's concentric. So it's
Okay. Yeah.
concentric.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that if every exercise, so it's very hard. Obviously, isometric, there is no movement, right? So we're not
Mhm.
lengthening, we're not shortening. But so we're doing concentric work where there's no slow eccentric. There's just you let the bar come down.
Yeah, concentrics involved. Every action's involved every day.
Correct.
It's is the priority of the
Correct.
contraction. Yeah, 100%.
It's sort of like the argument where people want to argue minutia to sound smart when you say, I'm going to do this leg curl and I'm going to change my foot position because I'm going to get semimembranosis. Now, that is true,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not completely turning the other ones off. You're just engaging one more than the other. Where if
Right.
you flex your toes, you're going to use biceps femoris. If you're turning in one way, you get semitendinosus. It's not like one is shut off. It's just you're engaging one more than the other. Same thing here. It's if you want to argue the minutia, of course, but for the lack of better, it's called the concentric day because we're focusing on concentric strength.
Love it. That's awesome.
Then Saturday we do another recovery day, and or we're in the pool that day doing pool work, which is recovery. Sunday is off, 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 and then we repeat, and then that's for 3 weeks. And
Okay.
then we go into an intensification phase. So the ISO holding become ISO overcoming. The eccentric become flywheel, and the sled day becomes plyometrics, and the fourth day stays the same. Now that's a general outline. If it's a 14-year-old kid, probably not going to do this. It's a system made for off season only. It's not
Mm-hmm.
applicable to in-season training. And how many people use it? What's the age? There's no hard line, but generally speaking, it's for a kid in high school or above that
Okay.
to start that. And then anybody that's below that is still on our long-term athletic development where they're doing full body workouts, learning movements, training movements, et cetera, et cetera. And then our last phase is what I call surfing the curve. And I put the day that's most important first. So if you're a guy who needs speed, you'll go speed, then you'll work backwards. You would do speed, speed, strength, strength, speed. And then your fourth day would be a maintenance of strength. Or if you're a guy that still needs strength, you would go strength first, then you would go down the curve, strength, speed, speed, strength, and you would go speed last. Now,
Okay.
obviously, if somebody would say, well, everybody needs speed, yes, but not everybody can get into the tank to utilize speed. So it's those people that can actually utilize it there.
Okay.
And
I
then
like that.
also, I forgot to mention that's when we start skating. So
Okay.
skating becomes involved, and we do on ice speed work with there. So typically speaking, at that point, I take a day out of the gym out and we'd use a day on the ice. Why? Because regardless, everybody who knows hockey players, you can't keep them off the ice at that point.
Mm-mm.
And they have this magic number in their head that September 1st, they got to get ready, even though training camp's not till like the 17th, which
Right.
is like 3 more weeks, but they just freak out for September 1st. So instead of, because again, we're keeping metrics to look at fatigue, and I'm seeing, okay, let's get them out of the gym one day because now the on ice is the priority at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So let's prioritize speed on the ice, because if you let them go out on the ice on their own, what are they going to do? They're going to play half ice 3-on-3 shinny that is doing absolutely nothing for them, but that's what they love to do because it's fun. But they're
Mm-hmm.
not better. They're not using what they just developed in the gym to make them faster on the ice. So, it sounds perfectly sane to me, but yet not too many guys do. We all take our time working on A skips, B skips to get them better at a 10-yard sprint, but why aren't we working on things that are going to help them get it faster on the ice? And, the argument can be, well, like football, they don't really ever skate in a straight line. And I'm going to say a big fat, they
Mm-hmm.
skate in a straight line a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to, I mean, anytime you're skating your ass off to get to a 2-on-1 or you're hard on a back check, that is a straight line as hard as you can.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you also look at hockey, how many people do a hard stop in a game? I mean, it's very, very rare that they do a hard stop in a game. They're doing more U-turns and rapid changes of direction. So what I just mentioned in that little sentence is omni-contraction. And that's why I believe in it, because the skating stride, the sport itself, everything you do requires all of the contractions I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Absolutely.
there's a small percent of people that think that you shouldn't train plyometrics because there's no stretch reflex in hockey. Let me just say, I'm glad they think
Yeah, exactly. No.
that. But there is that case. So I'm glad they think that, and I'll just leave it at that. But
I love it. That's awesome.
we train all of those things because that's the way the sport is played. And this now, that's not to say in another 5 years maybe I adopt something else, but I know I haven't looked recently, so every time I say this, people are like, you said, I have around 12,000 jumps on the force plate at this time. We have thousands of 10-yard sprints of data on our gates. We have hundreds of on-ice sprints. And then a 1080 isokinetic lateral push-off we have in the thousands. So I have a lot of data. So, you can say what you want, but, I just go by, like, I'm at the point in my career, I don't care if standing on a Basu, holding a hockey stick, scratching your head. If that worked, I would do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care. I'm not attached to one thing. I'm just attached to what works.
That's
And I
great.
don't have time to do something that doesn't work. And that's, I
Mm-hmm.
think, young coaches, because of Instagram and Twitter, you're exposed to so much video that you're like, man, that looks cool. Yeah, but the cool things are not the things that talk to the most elite speed coaches, track coaches, the fastest. To me, running 100 is that's just the most beautiful thing there is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that is, and those guys training is boring
Right.
with lots of rest and boring, same thing over and over again. But
And
that's what,
you can hear them running on the ground. That is like,
and if you look at their face, that's like
yeah.
completely relaxed. But the point is, the training isn't gimmicky. It's not shit that you're just throwing out there because it looks cool. The
Mm-hmm.
coach is not worried about. You think Verkhoshansky was worried about his athletes being entertained and liking him? And that's the
Yeah.
problem now is there's so many strength coaches that if your kids come in and they don't love what you're doing, even though you may be the only one in Minnesota with results, take it easy, Minnesota. I know there's a bunch of people with results. I'm just saying, for the point, let's say you were the only one, they still would go somewhere else just because
Bells
they're
and whistles.
going there or it's more
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's so true. But
Yeah.
awesome, Ben. That's phenomenal, man. I'm gonna end it there, but where could listeners, I know you're at your website, which is Prentiss
Yeah,
Hockey.
I don't use my website. They can check it out. I mean, I don't do
Yeah.
anything with it. I also don't do anything. I do use Instagram. I don't like it. But I try to put in from it. That's Prentiss Human Performance. I put out posts on there. The one I'm May 3rd and 4th, myself, Christian Thibodeau, and Alan Bishop, who's the head strength coach of the Houston basketball team, are going to do an Omni contraction seminar, 2-day seminar. The details will be released in 3 weeks, but it's the
Okay.
three of us, and it's all on Omni contraction. I'm going to be talking about Omni contraction in hockey. Alan Bishop will be doing basketball, and Christian will be doing American football. So pretty
That's
cool
awesome.
for strength coaches. We're going to make it really cheap so people can come and experience. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually teach, and then we're going to like do a workout so they can kind of see the contractions and how it's worked. So
Love it.
that's really the only thing. And I'm working on a flywheel article / book with my good friend Arthur. I don't know how to say his last name. Pacek, Pacek. He's a strength coach for a Polish basketball team. and we're going to do a cool flywheel article and how that pertains to the quad current and or omni contraction.
That's awesome. That's good stuff. Well, next time I'm in the Northeast, I'm going to definitely make a point to get down there.
You got it. Doors
Um,
always open.
Thanks,
Love to
Ben.
talk.
Appreciate it, man. Well, hey, thanks for your time, Ben. This was phenomenal.
Thank you for having
And
me.
yeah, and hopefully our listeners will get a lot of information here, which I think they will. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Absolutely. Thanks,
All
Sean.
right. Thanks, Ben.